Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 102, Tim Drake, as requested by Ariel, who is working her way through the Bat family. We're almost out of Robins. We've got Stephanie and Carrie Kelly, and I guess maybe Cassandra. It was Cassandra. Was Cassandra Robin? No, Cassandra was Batgirl. She was never Robin.
That's right.
So at this point, we've got Stephanie Brown and Carrie Kelly. That's it.
Yep.
On the Robins. I don't know what she's going to do when she runs out of Robins.
I'm not worried in the slightest. So
This is true. There's still plenty of Bat family left to cover before we run out of steam. So a quick reminder that our TeePublic store is on sale again this week. If you're listening to this episode, the day it comes out is on sale from today until Friday. You get up to 35% off. And we'll have links to that in the show notes. So you can get some holiday gifts for the Capes on the Couch fan in your life before Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever holiday you choose to celebrate. Get them some Capes on the Couch swag. Get them some Why Because Comics gear. It's all good. And I know we haven't done one of these in a while, but I want to give a shout out to a podcast. It's a newer podcast. To Know Her Is to Fear Her, the Spider-Woman podcast. This is all focused on Jessica Drew, and it's co-hosted by our friend Ray from the Into the Night Moon Knight podcast. He actually took votes as to like which character he should do another podcast on, and Jessica Drew, Spider-Woman, won out. So I know that they have had the writer of the current ongoing or the recent Spider-Woman run on, Carla Pacheco, I believe her name is. And so go check that out. To Know Her Is to Fear Her if you are a fan of Spider-Woman. We have not yet gotten to Spider-Woman, any of the Spider-Womans, Jessica, Julia,
right.
On the show, but we'll get there one day.
Oh, yeah.
So, Tim Drake, the third Robin, created by Marv Wolfman and Pat Broderick in Batman number 436, August 1989. He was named Tim after Tim Burton, the director of the, at that time, new Batman movie, which 7-year-old me just adored, by the way, just throwing that out there. So, young Tim Drake visited the circus the night the Graysons were killed, and he later deduced Batman and Robin's identities by seeing a move that Dick pulled off in the circus, and then he watched Robin do it, and he said, "Oh, must be Dick Grayson." And he decided to teach himself martial arts to follow in their footsteps. So he offered himself to Dick as a new Robin following the death of Jason Todd. And we talked all about Jason Todd because, as I said, we've done pretty much all the Robins. So Bruce was initially hesitant, but puts Tim through rigorous training before giving him the costume. So when Bruce retires after the Knightfall storyline, and you can listen to our Bane episode to find out more about that, Tim works alongside John Paul Valley, who we did an episode on, but distrusts him and his methods, and he helps Bruce reclaim the Batman mantle. And then Tim began dating Stephanie Brown, who we have not done an episode on yet. I just kind of felt the need to point that out because everybody always seems to forget about Stephanie Brown.
Oh.
And then Tim was forced to retire from being Robin after his father discovered his secret. So after Stephanie and his father were both killed, he moved to Bloodhaven to get away from Gotham. Bloodhaven being where Dick Grayson was operating as Nightwing once he decided to leave Gotham and strike out on his own. So Tim battled both a resurrected Jason Todd and Damian Wayne, who we also did an episode on, for the Robin title. There's going to be a lot of references to the earlier Robin episodes in the show notes. So when Bruce dies, quote unquote dies, and Dick takes over, he makes Damian the new Robin. So Tim becomes Red Robin and looks for Bruce, much to the consternation of the rest of the Bat family. And he only finds a cooperating partner in Ra's al Ghul. who we also did an episode on.
Yep.
And when Bruce returns, Tim takes over the Teen Titans. So the New 52 comes along and they completely rewrite the backstory. Now he's a young hacker who draws the wrath of the Penguin, who we've not done an episode on. So his family goes into witness protection and he's taken under Bruce Wayne's tutelage, where he becomes Red Robin out of respect for the dead Jason Todd, because he didn't want to call himself Robin. So he becomes Red Robin, and he's once again serving as the leader of the Titans. Then DC Rebirth comes along and they say, nobody likes that hacker backstory. We're going to go back to the original backstory, circus, third Robin, yada, yada, yada. So most of his backstory was really covered in a lengthy Robin solo series, largely written by Chuck Dixon, written by a couple other folks, but Chuck Dixon did a majority of the writing on that. And this is really where we get to see Tim grow from, I think he ages from about 14 to maybe 16, 17 through over the course of the run. And this is really where we get to see a lot of Tim's character development is in that Robin series. So I just want to throw that out there in advance of the recommended reading before we get to that point in the episode. But the issues now, Tim is self-taught in a lot of respects. He does go through extensive amounts of training under Bruce, but he is also considered to be one of the weaker fighters as far as the Robins are concerned. And so he's much more reliant on his bow staff as his weapon than some of the other Robins. So being self-taught in any area kind of leads to some unknown pitfalls because, I mean, well, I don't want to entirely step on your toes, but certainly if you're self-taught, you're not going to know what you're doing right and wrong. And I'm sure that's something that you're going to get into. So I will turn it over to you.
Sure. I think this is very timely because what I have noticed is, especially now with technology as it is and the internet, the way it's set up, you can learn just about anything that you want to. And that's a wonderful thing. I'm not knocking it. But at the same time, there is a reason why over the course of human existence, we've had a teaching system. Originally, it was simply because the only way you could learn something is either from seeing something happen and coming to your own conclusion, or someone tells you that that's what happens, and therefore you have the choice of believing them or not believing them. And we have this construct that still exists where, in general, if someone is older than you, then you tend to believe them. If they're younger than you, then you question it. So when I say self-taught, it's not just the idea that you're seeking information that you can then apply in some sort of meaningful way. It's the whole learning process. So I've already mentioned the most basic part of it, which is trial, error, and accidental success. That's a behavioral approach to life. But the idea that you can actually start creating a structured system that will allow you to get the most salient points of a particular topic and then have someone provide a step-by-step process to test yourself at a level that you can appreciate and comprehend what you have just downloaded in your brain. I'm trying to keep it timely so people really get what I'm saying here. And then from there, learning and building off of that previous lesson into the next one and doing it in a stepwise fashion. As much as people say they hate that, like a lot of people say, oh, I can't stand school. I can't stand that construct. I want to do everything Montessori style. That's fine. That's an amazing thing. That's wonderful. What I'm getting at is, if it's all just you, then you don't have the sounding board necessary to recognize why something was structured the way it was. I'm going to relate it to something that I went through in medical school. With the way I grew up, I love my family and they're amazing, but we didn't have immediate doctors in our family. So a lot of what I went through medical school, even through college, I didn't know how hospitals work. I didn't know why I had to give presentations when I was talking about a patient the way I was. So similar to this podcast, I would do things kind of off the cuff. And I got reamed out for it. And rightfully so, their point wasn't that I was giving the wrong information, although there were some times where I was ignorant. It was also the reason why we do it this way is so that no matter where you are, you could be in New Jersey, you could be in Kentucky, you could be in California, you could be in the middle of the desert on a rural clinic with just one other doctor. And if you present things the way that we're showing you, we know for a fact you're going to be able to provide the relevant information so that that other doctor who may or may not have the same experiences as you be able to process it, and you guys can come to a conclusion that you can agree on for this person's diagnosis and treatment. And that is something that as a young person, I did not respect nearly as much as I should have. So I love the fact that you can learn just about anything about different diseases online, WebMD, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, how many times have I had a patient come to me and say, well, Dr. Google says this, and I have to kind of take extra time just to explain what the limitations are with that. So that fits with Tim, not just from the training standpoint physically, but also the hacker part too. It can work either way. As a matter of fact, with the hacker thing, it's probably even more relevant because people go to coding boot camps and learn the basics. And in all honesty, that's a pretty cool thing because a lot of times they're getting the same skills and able to get some pretty cool jobs without even needing to get the added college courses or degree that so many people go through. So I'm not saying that one way is totally right compared to the other, but if you're not willing to acknowledge why there is a structured, organized system, despite disliking its complexity, then you're going to miss the fact that it may have been built up over decades, if not centuries, so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that people hundreds of years ago did. That's the part that sometimes gets lost. I appreciate people that want to do things fast, want to do things young, and want to make a huge difference in the world. It's an amazing thing. But make sure that your ego is not writing checks that your body can't cash. Just a little word to the wise there. And this is one of those situations where I totally lived that experience where I thought I could just totally break the mold, change the world and all of that. And there's a reason why it didn't work out that way. And I'm glad that I had the recognition that I was willing to adjust on the fly and go with a structure that saves lives as opposed to saying, well, I'll just totally muck up the medical establishment. You know, because we all, honestly, when you're a teenager, you're supposed to have a little bit of that in you, but it doesn't have to be everything. So just any of our younger listeners out there, I hear you, man. I respect the fact that you're going to change the game. Just recognize that you're still going to have some rules involved.
So the second issue that he has, loss of multiple fathers. Now, obviously, Batman lost his parents. We see this as a recurring loss throughout much of comics and much of pop culture, really, is losing parents. But in Tim's case, he loses his actual father. Well, he loses his mother, and then his father, his stepmother, and Bruce dies, and Stephanie dies. But in particular, loss of multiple fathers, I think, is really one of the things that has the most impact on him, is losing his biological father as well as Bruce's death. And that is, we'll get into some more of the impact of Bruce's death when we get into issue number 3. But basically just loss of these figures. Because let's not forget, when all this goes down, Tim is still a teenager when all this is going on. And that is potentially very traumatic because that's still young enough where you're still looking to those parental figures for guidance. It's not that I'm not saying that losing your parents if in your 30s is an easy thing to deal with, but at that point you are well established. In theory, you're an adult, etc. If you're a teenager, you still have a lot to go on. You know, you're close, but you're not all the way there. And that can be a particular type of trauma.
Yeah. That's an excellent way to put it. So just to go back to the basic role of parents being protectors, being your first real teachers. And as time develops, they can become something akin to friends for sure, although every relationship is different. So there's no guarantee that it's going to be like that. But also just, being a sounding board for what someone is emotionally going through, especially in those adolescent years, that can be highly impactful. So the idea that one of those people is not going to be able to fill that role, that can lead to some stagnation because in theory, you can have the last impression of that person. What was the last conversation, or what was the last thing that you were talking about or working on? What was the last punishment? What was the last dream? What was the parent's dream? Did they have aspirations for you? So it can be a motivating factor as much as it can be a hindrance. But as you mentioned, when you say losing multiple fathers, I mean, for some people, they're probably saying like, well, is that realistic? Well, let's go through it. Especially with the compression now, due to the increased longevity of people's lives now, modern day. If you have a parent, there's a great chance that you have your grandparents throughout your life. And grandparents, at least as humans compared to the rest of the animal kingdom, grandparents have been known to play a spectacular role in the development of children, especially as parents have to work during the day. So that bond becomes even stronger as providers as well. So you have that relationship. How many aunts and uncles do you have? How many people do you have as a coach if you play a sport, or instructors outside of school, or a teacher that you simply like? And I'm not focusing as much on the gender, although obviously there can be factors in that too. If we're talking about the typical stereotypes that exist, whether they're right or wrong, if that's the environment that you're growing up in, if that's the culture that you're growing up in, that can be hugely impactful. And then imagine just one by one, almost like dominoes falling, those pillars in your life, they're leaving. That can create a sense of abandonment. And you can develop some real irrational thoughts surrounding it because, as humans do, we love to fill in gaps. If we don't know something, we will find a way somehow magically to know it later on, and it may not make sense. So honestly, an adolescent may start trying to piece together how it's their fault. What did I do that these people are no longer here? You know? And unfortunately, in traumatic events, there may be some factor in that. So once again, blurring the lines of reality and irrationality, which can lead to direct, severe emotional responses. All of it. It's oh man, it's so fascinating when you think about it because you're now dealing with a situation the way I described it. Heaven forbid, the most common thing is that a grandparent dies before a parent. But can you imagine a parent dying before a grandparent and now having that discussion with their grandson or granddaughter about what's just happened and how they didn't expect that to happen in their life? And now they have to process their grief with someone that's going through their own grief. Or also the traditional, parent talking about their grandparent dying. I mean, all of it. It just creates these interwoven layers of emotional complexity that if you're not aware of it, it can start to tear at the other parts of your life. So I'm not saying it has to be that way. I'm just saying that it's one of the dangers if someone has noticed this as a pattern. As long as there are other people that are still around, or the person has a strong enough construct in their own mind as to what the expectations are that are healthy, then this doesn't have to be the be all end all. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as Bruce Wayne and Batman and the rest of the Bat family who all have had variations of this. But let's be honest, part of the success, if you want to call it that, there's a reason why we call it the Bat family. It's because they have each other. If they didn't create that, if they didn't have that, they all would have, in my opinion, had a much higher chance of being worse off.
Oh, I don't really think that's a question. As much as being in the Bat family has led to a host of other issues, and certainly I think each member of the Bat family has a whole slew of emotional baggage that they brought into it, and the environment that they're in doesn't always do them favors. You really question how, I don't want to say how bad is it that they're in the Bat family, but what would they be like if they didn't encounter Batman? Where would this energy and these emotions and these feelings go if they didn't have the outlet provided to them by Bruce Wayne? I think some of it depends on the character, certainly. I think some characters, I think Tim would fare, I don't want to say he'd fare great, but I think Tim would fare just fine had he not been taken under Batman's wing. I think somebody like Jason probably would have, I almost shudder to think what Jason would have ended up as had he not been taken in by Batman, and maybe there's a Elseworld story in there. If it hasn't already been written, DC, give us a call. We'll write it. Pay us a lot of money. Pay me enough money. I'll quit my job and I'll help write it. But yeah, the notion of the family. Frankly, I think, maybe there's another episode that we can add to the potential crossovers is a discussion of the family dynamics within the Bat family.
Yeah,
something for next year.
Yeah,
we'll plant some seeds. You and I'll have to sit down and figure out what we're going to do for that. We've got some really cool ideas coming up for our 3rd anniversary in March. So stay tuned. So the 3rd issue then, and it ties into some of the stuff from the 2nd one. When Bruce dies, and as we mentioned this, when Bruce dies and Dick takes over, he makes Damian the new Robin. So he sort of kicks out Tim, and Tim says, well, I know Bruce isn't really dead. He's lost somewhere. I'm going to go look for him. And nobody believes him. The only one who believes him is Ra's al Ghul. And this pits him in particular against Dick, who really questions how dedicated he is to Batman if he's siding with Ra's over everything, and he's questioning Tim's loyalty and everything. And Tim basically says, look, Bruce trained me to question everything. That's what I'm doing. If you're not, it's almost, Tim is essentially telling Dick, I'm more true to what Batman is really like. I'm loyal to the idea. You're loyal to the man. And that sole dissenter puts him at odds with the rest of the family. And it comes down to a question of loyalty to an individual versus loyalty to an idea. And that is something that we've seen quite a bit of in this country. But it's this notion of loyalty to an individual versus loyalty to an idea can fracture relationships.
Yep. Especially if, by definition, there is enough about that person that the relationship has lasted for any significant period of time. It means that you have commonalities, be it common interests, be it common philosophies, whatever it is. So in that sense, it may or may not be intentional. So if it's coworkers, then you know you're there because you work for an organization. And therefore, while it may be awkward it's something that everyone expects to get through no matter what the circumstance, unless we're talking about a whistleblower situation, in which case you literally are putting yourself on an island, and that it has its own can of worms. But in this case, we're talking about people that voluntarily, meaning if you're in a romantic relationship, if you're within a family and you're of an age where you have agency, you're able to make those types of decisions and you're dealing with these people. Let's say, as you so eloquently put it, you're dealing with political views. One side views one way, one side views the other way. And yet, this is a person, let's go ahead with big brother, little brother. You've played the same sports. You've followed in his footsteps. Everybody compares you to him. And yet, there's this random turn where your political views don't match up. And now all of a sudden it's a family divide. Now and I swear to you, I'm not saying this to be dramatic, although I guess for comics it's apropos. Are you worthy of my time? Should I still be talking to you? Should you still be in this family? These are the things that people say. There's nothing made up about it. And yet, I think there is something deeper to that. It's the idea that when you're the only one that is saying that. So in other words, it's not talking up even split in the family. It's everybody has this set of beliefs that have not changed for a long period of time. And one family member is saying something different. So you have alienation, you have isolation, you have potential for threats, not just being ostracized emotionally, but literally being kicked out of the house. And believe it or not, as much as we dramatize it for today, let's not forget, at least I'll go with what I know. We're in the United States, therefore the idea of the Civil War and how families were fractured with that was quite literally life and death. And it did play out that way. We have records of it. The one thing that seems to really stand the test of time is that having a sense of self is crucial to emotional survival. The quote unquote easy thing to do is to just agree with everyone around you because it keeps the peace in the circumstance. The much more difficult thing to do, whether or not it results in the continuation of the relationship, is to say that you have made a reasoned decision with the information at hand, come to a conclusion that you are willing to pursue, not only because it is something that you consider to be beneficial to society, but has also led to a certain sense of comfort and peace within yourself, and you're still a productive member of said society. If you can, no other way to say it, if you could check off all those boxes, then that may be, as difficult as it is, the better decision than to just go with the flow. And that's something that I don't say lightly. And I am not advocating dissent for dissent's sake. I'm simply saying that for those of you out there that feel like you're in that situation, and it doesn't have to be political. I mean, I love the fact that, my family, in terms of my household right now, we have different sports teams that we like. My wife and I don't get along with just about any sports team except for the Giants, and right now that's going great. And okay, this is breaking news for you, Tony. So guess which team that my daughter decided, as of last year, she would always ask if they were on so that she could watch them instead of the Giants, the Eagles.
Wow.
And she still lives in this house, man.
I should hope you hadn't kicked her out.
Well, she is pretty precocious and she does have a certain charm about her. So I'm sure she can make it work somehow. There's plenty of adoption agencies and,
Tell us you can stay with Uncle Tony and Aunt Kat.
Well, yeah, I guess that would be an easy way out. But no, I'm learning to mature, and I'll let that slide. But no, I'm giving a lighthearted example, and the point though is, if anyone does feel in those situations, obviously never put yourself in danger, but recognize that, as I said, if you are doing it from a place of reason and a place of true, honest understanding of how the world works, and you do think that the world would be a better place because of those types of decisions, then by all means do what you think is right. But if you're not able to check off those boxes, I want to make it just as clear. If you're not able to check off all of those boxes, then recognize that your mind still needs to be open. And hopefully the people around you are also doing a similar assessment. And if they're not, try to encourage them to do it for themselves as well. And the best part of that type of exercise is you realize there is way more common ground than you initially thought. Almost overwhelmingly, there's more common ground in these situations that people realize. But it's because we have to polarize, because it's the easier mental thing to do. It takes less energy. We throw all those things in the back of our heads and say, well, it doesn't matter. And the truth is, that's the most critical stuff. All of the similarities that you just gloss over are actually the most crucial point, because it allows for continued growth together rather than further division.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to be really blunt on this one. Do you think half of the world is evil?
No.
Okay. And yet, why do we treat these situations that way? 100%. I'm not exaggerating with that. When I hear what people say to one another about other people, that is the impression that they are leaving on me. And when I ask that question, almost universally, I get the answer that you just gave. So I challenge people that way. I ask them that. And I hope by asking them that on both sides of the aisle, in this case in the United States, but this is true anywhere, for any circumstance. If you do it that way, then it humanizes way more than any one topic, one issue, any of it. Because it sounds absurd. If we really are on the verge of saying that half the world is evil and therefore half the world must be destroyed, then we are way beyond any point that this podcast or anyone else can have an intervention and it's just going to go down. But I don't believe that. I don't ascribe to that. Not in the slightest. And every time I've said that to someone, I've gotten that answer. No. So that tells me that we're not at that point, even if it feels like we are.
I'll say, I don't think that half the world is evil. I don't know that other people share that viewpoint. And that's the scary part.
And yet, as long as that number is less than 50%, by definition, there's still a chance. That's all I'm getting at with that. I know we're getting a little deep here, but that's what I'm getting at. If it's ever over 50%, then fine, we're doomed. I get it. That doesn't matter. I'm not seeing a way out with that. What I'm saying is, I think that number is way below 50%, and I would love for people to prove me right on that.
Well, without getting too into the weeds and obviously keeping in mind, of course, that we're recording this before the election, all I'll say is that based on the popular vote totals, I believe you're correct.
Oh, brother.
That's all I'm going to say. That's the political junkie in me.
Oh, boy.
But I don't want to get too into the weeds on that. So I'll just say, let's take a break, plug a few shows, and when we get back, we'll get into treatment.
Hey, it's good old boy Mike.
This is good old boy Dave.
From Sips, Suds, and Smokes. Sips, Suds, and Smokes covers wine, tea, coffee, distilled spirits, whiskey, scotch, beer, cigars.
People whose first name starts with Q.
Bad fake British accents.
And we always take time to make fun of the people of Alabama.
Banned once again.
It's a 1-hour episode that's mildly entertaining for about 22 minutes.
I think mildly would be a vast improvement.
Well, we do have the only beer show with the Holy Man. We talk about these products and rate them with our unique rating system, like our Suds 5 rating. Do you really have something better to do with your life for an hour than actually listen to this show?
Well, don't make them think about it.
Well, join us on this radio station, podcast network, or via our Android app.
Hi, I'm one of the High Priests of Khonshu Ray, and I have the sacred privilege of providing you, the loony listener, with a podcast honouring Marvel's very own Moon Knight. So join me and a host of others at Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or support the show by becoming a Patreon member. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. It's time to get your Khonshu on.
Hi, I'm Gail Simone, and you're listening to Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. Treatment in universe for Tim Drake. Interesting notion. And I know we've got a fun skit planned, very entertaining take on it. But realistically speaking.
Yeah. Well, I have just as wacky an idea for this one. See, Tim has been recognized for what he can do. He's intelligent. He does have athletic ability, even if he isn't the best fighter. He does have leadership capabilities, and that's been shown. He doesn't come across to me as narcissistic, but I do think that there is an aspect to him that generates this idea that, as we kind of hinted at with the third issue, he always has this idea of what everyone should be doing and what's always right for everyone. And that type of attitude can really start to grate on others. There's one person that I think he knows that has a lot of experience dealing with so many superheroes and yet is able to do it in a serving fashion. And he doesn't ever give a hint that his ego is getting in the way, and he is completely loyal to them. He literally is willing to do it all from the start, and that's Alfred. I think that's a skill set that he hasn't mastered, and I think him actually going under the tutelage of Alfred himself and actually doing his role for a while would allow him to see a side of things that he hasn't considered. And I think that would allow for a lot of healing to happen, because Alfred has seen some things in his life and still manages to keep that stiff upper lip. And although Tim has his pride and he does do a lot of amazing things, I think that's where his ceiling is. And the way that I've always heard it, you can always tell a person's character by how they treat the person with the lowest pay in their organization. Not that Alfred is underpaid, but I'm just saying in general, he's the one that no one really thinks about when things are going down. And yet he's the one, as we've seen, and if you've listened to our episodes, you know, he takes that very seriously. And if he didn't, things would be a lot worse for everyone involved, including Tim. So I think, you know, giving him guidelines and saying, you know what, I'd like you to shadow him, similar to how we do in medicine. Like, shadow Alpha. Actually do what he does. Be him. And see how that changes your perspective on things.
Okay. We could maybe mention that during the Alfred episode, but, you know, better late than never.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, oh yeah, shoehorn in Tim Drake, and yeah, I'll just have Tim shadow him. Like, no.
All right, fair enough. So out of universe then, we've got a young man with a lot of skills, a lot of potential, dealing with some loss. maybe looking for guidance, looking for someone to lead him somewhere, help unlock that potential in a positive way.
Yeah.
I don't know how much work you do with teens or how much training you have in dealing with adolescents, but I'd imagine that's where it's heading.
Well, whenever we use the term adolescence, and I know I've brought this up in previous episodes, we automatically say teenagers and think that that's the same thing. Adolescence is simply a description of a period of development that goes beyond teenage years, goes into your 20s, really. And if we're talking about the social construct of it at this point, anybody that's had to move in, and once again, not a knock, not an insult, anyone that's had to move back in with their family in their 20s or 30s because of financial circumstances or jobs not being available, all that. I mean, that's a continuation of adolescence or a reinstitution of adolescence. It's not an insult. It's just simply a fact of life. So from that standpoint, I think I've definitely dealt with that. I will give the qualifier that I am not a child psychiatrist. I did not do a child fellowship. Having said that, I do have exposure to children. I do work with children in the emergency room in crisis settings. So I do have to see patients that are under the age of 18. So I do have some experience there. And many times those crises have to do with a breakdown of the family construct or trauma or ongoing mood symptoms, whatever the case may be. And in all of those situations, the first thing is just establishing safety. As I know people may be tired of hearing it, but it doesn't make it any less true. Making sure that they are in a safe environment. And if not, making sure that the proper child protective services or authorities are involved. But that's not the go-to. The first thing after that is trying to establish what their own construct is, because we've said time and time again, once you get to that age, it's not the parents, it's not the teachers, those aren't the people that are forming their view of the world. It's their peers. What is going on there? If it's a situation where they don't think they have those types of connections, well, I'll admit I can't be their friend. I certainly can't do that. But there are organizations in the world that actually do focus on that. So, something that I'll admit as a part of this podcast, we probably don't do enough is, and that's my fault, has nothing to do with Anthony, is recognizing, for example, Big Brother, Big Sister programs, things that aren't necessarily directly related as mental health professionals, but are still incredibly vital to a person's mental health. That there are organizations out there that can actually lead to that type of mentorship. There are outpatient programs that are specifically geared towards adolescents, depending on what's going on. So making sure that they can get connected with that. This is one of those areas where teenagers will tune you out if they think that you are teaching to them. That is the overwhelming experience that I've had. So as I've mentioned in previous episodes, the other thing that I'll try and do is find what's the hook. What's the one thing, be it pop culture, be it anything else, an academic topic, whatever, something. There is something. I can assure you there is something that young man or young woman is interested in that an adult with a certain breadth of experience is going to know a little bit about. Don't fake it, but at least acknowledge that it's there. And if they know that it's genuine, then they will open up more to you in terms of therapy. So my go-to wells have always been video games. Nowadays, I'll admit, music is going way downhill for me. I'm nowhere near as good as I used to be with that in terms of modern artists. But just about any other topic, I can usually find something. And of course, comics and most films, things like that. Oh, those are really easy ends for me. You don't have to copy mine, find your own, but that's usually what we do to really start to draw that connection. Because at that point, you can't be their friend. You're not going to be their parent, but you can be a mentor of sorts, even if that's not specifically what the therapy is going to be. And that's the type of thing that I've always advocated for. Because the more you can model positive experiences for people that have seen very few, then the greater opportunity they have to start incorporating that idea into their emotional life.
Very well said. And perhaps that's information that could be useful for both for any adolescent listeners that we have, as well as any listeners that we have who are parents of adolescents. I think we're probably going to skew a little more towards the parents of adolescents as far as listeners, but I don't want to discount the potential for, any 16-year-olds who may happen to be listening to us. All very wise words. And gosh, I'm just thinking back to, when we were in that age group many moons ago. And it is true what you were saying about kids and teenagers have a very finely tuned bullshit detector, and they will pick up if you're trying too hard. They will pick up on it. Absolutely. You can't lie to them. You can't fake it with them. I don't know what it is. I don't know what happens to that detector when we get older. By the time you turn 60, it's just gone. And then you're getting emails from Nigeria saying, oh, this prince wants to send me money. Oh, sure. I'll just give him my bank account info. That's why they fish the older people, because they know a teenager would never fall for it.
Well, that's because a teenager probably thought of it.
You're potentially not wrong, but in any case, that's way off topic. So let's see what happens when we get Tim Drake on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Tim. I'm Dr. Issues.
Hello, Doctor. I've been looking forward to this for a long time.
You have?
Yes. You worked your way through the other Robins. Now it's my turn.
That wasn't intentional. It just sort of worked out that way. Hey, wait a minute. How do you know I even spoke to them?
Do you think we don't talk to each other? I mean, even if they hadn't told me, I would have figured it out.
Fair point. Having said that, I can't divulge what we spoke about. That would violate patient confidentiality.
Let me guess. Damien needs to work on his anger. Dick probably spent half the time doing squats. Jason complained about Bruce. And Jean Paul just wants to rest. Oh, and Alfred needs to figure out who he is outside of being Bruce's servant.
I cannot confirm nor deny any of what you said.
Which confirms it. Damn, I'm good.
So what's your takeaway from this?
That I know my team better than they know themselves. They didn't have to come here to learn all that stuff. I could have told them what they needed to do.
Are you suggesting you're smarter than they are?
Not smarter per se, just that they all have their issues to deal with.
Oh, and you don't?
I never said that. I'm well aware of my idiosyncrasies, but I can handle mine. I think the team would be more efficient if they followed my lead, is all.
That seems awfully presumptuous. But no offense. I'm sure you're very good at many things, but unless you have a degree in psychiatry or some therapy training, it's best to leave those kinds of things to the professionals. I don't tell you how to fight crime. Don't tell me how to do my job.
I think you hit on something, though. What good is having training and talent if they're not maximized to their full potential? I mean, tell me you agree with that.
I agree. To a point.
You sound like them. What a disappointment. I mean, here I am carving out time in my busy crime fighting schedule for you. Also, you can tell me that sometimes the best way to fight crime is to be good to yourself.
Who said that? That doesn't really sound like a Batman line.
I don't remember. Maybe it wasn't one of them. Maybe it was one of the Titans. Whatever. That's irrelevant. I'm sick of it.
So more than one person said some variation of it.
You would think that so-called dedicated heroes would pay attention to at least one of my bullet points on my sticky notes, but no. It's always stop bossing me around, or you're too young to be the VP of Wayne Enterprises, or my spinning back fist is better than yours anyway, so stop sneaking video footage of my training before I rip your throat out. It's hard being so dedicated.
Well, I'm sure you have your own self-critiques too, right?
Are you kidding me? I mean, I'm 15% off my maximum strength goals. I forgot to pull my costume out of the wash on time, so I had to rewash it. I was almost late to the night watch planning meeting because I forgot I rescheduled to make room for an early stakeout. Whew. Man, am I exhausted. I mean, I didn't even talk about nearly getting eviscerated by a lone assassin last week. I was getting real sloppy.
Well, slow down. No, I mean, seriously, like, slow down, man. You're not meant to do everything.
But I'm good at a lot of things.
Well, you're not good to anybody if you're running yourself ragged. You know that, right? Like, when was the last time you took a vacation or like even a long walk with no one around?
I do listen to some motivational speakers and podcasts when I'm on patrol.
Stop. You're not getting it. Don't try to cram in more like beneficial busy work into your alleged downtime. Listen to music. Hell, listen to nothing. I bet that's a scary thought, right? Like just get in touch with stuff that you don't deal with every day. Turn off communication. Lose the utility belt. No weapons.
I got to cut you off there. I'm still at risk.
Fine. Concealed weapons only. The point is, disconnect from what you do every day so that you could start to envision a different life for yourself. Things don't have to be perfect for you to have a perfect experience.
But what about the others? I mean, maybe I could organize a retreat.
No retreats, no guest speakers, no formal bonding exercises. Sure, bring along anyone you want, but let them do whatever they want.
Are you trying to describe stereotypical fun, like a vacation?
I don't care if you stay in the Batcave. Just if you lead by example, then maybe, just maybe, the others will be more open to you too.
Those closed-minded, ego-driven, competitive schmucks would never.
Now you're getting it.
So, is this something I need to coordinate on our satellite system for transport, or I could just use the bat vehicles? Or
I don't care. Stop talking details. Just go. Like for once. I'm. You know what? I'm not going to set up a repeat session. Don't contact me for at least 2 weeks. The only thing I want to know is what your favorite part of the journey was.
So you're serious about this? Why didn't you suggest this to the others?
Because every case is unique and it deserves that type of meticulous time and effort.
I have to ask, do you practice what you preach? Because I've done some snooping and I notice you're at the office every day. When was the last time you took extra time off?
I'll admit my faults if you admit yours. After all, maybe that's the real reason I don't want to schedule you back so soon.
Touché. In that case, I must go on sabbatical.
Oh, brother.
So your advice was go on vacation.
Well, that's a part of it. It's
Physician, heal thyself.
Yeah. I feel seen.
As well you should, son. As well you should.
Don't worry. I make sure. And by the way, I'm not saying anything out of school. Like when I do need someone to talk to, if I need therapy, I gladly seek it. If I do need time, my wife makes sure by hook or by crook, I get it.
By hooker? What?
Not nice. Good job. Yeah. Anyway,
that's an incredible wife. That's a good wife right there.
Oh no. Well, the point is, yes, everyone needs to take care of themselves, including doctors, including myself.
If you're taking care of yourself, then what's the hooker for?
You know what? Just for that, I don't have a pun. You took care of it, man. You handled everything just right.
I I needed this. It was a little cathartic after the horrible week I've had.
Yeah.
I needed this laugh. Thank you. So the recommended reading is the Robin series, the Chuck Dixon run. Any point of the series works. It's a very well done series. There's some good arcs. There's some not so great arcs, but by and large, I would recommend just reading the series, Chuck Dixon run on the Robin series. And, you really can't go wrong. So next episodes are Luke Cage and Clones. And, again, somewhere in there will be the Mental Health Avengers. Not entirely certain exactly where. And then after Clones, we will be, as a reminder, we'll be going on our hiatus for the holidays. And then we will come back in January of 2021 when hopefully the whole world has been reset and things will be better and we can be out of this shit show of a year. I'm just hoping that it's not one of those situations where it's like, man, 2020 was really terrible. And 2021 is like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
We shall see.
Right.
So, reminder again, our TeePublic store is on sale this Wednesday through Friday. So go to teepublic.com/user/capes on the couch or check the show notes for links and get yourself or someone you know or love some Capes on the Couch swag. So check that out. And all of our episodes are available on our website, capesonthecouch.live. Please like, rate, listen, subscribe. All of those things on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. We don't have enough followers for a full-time YouTube vanity URL yet, but maybe one day. And that's about going to wrap it up. So since Doc said he doesn't have a pun, since I ended it early.
I will say something though. Just make sure that you have the proper people around you so that when you're trying to do some improvement, you're not robbing yourself.
Womp womp. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.